But a damp and gloomy start once again. This time, some heavier and more persistent rainfall pushes into western Scotland, western England and Wales, moving slowly into central parts by the afternoon. Meanwhile, it's a much brighter day for East Anglia in the southeast. Sunshine here, 11 to 13 degrees, and it does brighten up across Northern Ireland, West Wales, southwest England by the afternoon as well. Most places seeing highs of 9 to 12 degrees. The band of rain slowly moves east during Thursday night, and it's really going to stall across eastern parts of the UK on Friday whilst brighter weather arrives into the west. Gradually, the weekend does turn drier and a little brighter. There'll be some sunshine around with highs of 8 or 9 Celsius.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome to On the Money, where we're focused not only on the military conflict between Russia and Ukraine, but the related economic battle between Russia and the West. In recent days, the likes of BP, Shell and other oil and gas giants have moved to sever their links with Vladimir Putin's Russia. Now many other leading Western companies, Ford, Boeing, Apple, as well as some of the biggest freight shipping outfits are also rushing for the door. Russia's economic isolation, what does it mean for you? After the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon. It's just 1 minute past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister has told the Commons the munitions Russia has been dropping on Ukraine fully qualifies as a war crime. Ahead of Prime Minister's questions, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, who was watching proceedings, was welcomed with a standing ovation. Boris Johnson praised the country and its citizens for their resolve. He also said he'd told the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that the UK will do everything it can to accelerate the transfer of weapons.
Putin has gravely miscalculated. In his abhorrent assault on a sovereign nation, he has underestimated the extraordinary fortitude of the Ukrainian people and the unity and resolve of the free world in standing up to his barbarism. The UN General Assembly will vote later today, and we call on every nation to join us in condemning Russia and demanding that Putin turn his tanks around.
In Ukraine, the State Emergency Service says more than 2,000 civilians have been killed since the start of the Russian invasion. Hundreds of structures, including transport facilities, hospitals, kindergartens and homes, have been destroyed. The mayor of Kharkiv says the city is regularly being hit by rocket and airstrikes. This morning, President Volodymyr Zelensky said resistance had been strong and Russia too had suffered heavy losses.
Just think about this figure. Almost 6,000 Russians died, Russian servicemen, within 6 days of war. A figure without enemy's losses during the past night. 6,000. To receive what? To receive Ukraine? It is impossible. It will not happen with rockets. It will not happen with bombs, tanks, any strikes. We are on our land, and there will be an international tribunal to prosecute them for the war against us.
Thousands of Ukrainians have said they'll stay and fight to defend their country, including MP Kira Rudik.
We have enough of stuff and we are getting more and more supplies to be able to survive the siege. We understand that Putin has nothing that could stop him except for the bravery of Ukrainian people and the support of our international partners.
Ukrainians say Russian troops are deliberately destroying residential areas.
Many people in Ukraine, they are strong, they are not frightened, and they are ready to fight till the end, till the last drop of blood, if it will be needed.
And yesterday, Russia continued shelling the residential area, so deliberately destroying the houses, and they did it throughout the day and in the night as well. So people were not able to go out and were hiding in the shelters and the basements.
US aeroplane manufacturer Boeing has suspended parts and maintenance for Russian airlines. It comes after several other US brands pulled out of Russia in response to the invasion. Google has blocked mobile apps to connected news channels RT and Sputnik from its Play Store. Apple has halted the sale of its products and restricted its map services. Ford Motor Company has also interrupted operations. Let's bring you some other news now. A 15-year-old girl has been seriously injured in a shooting in Liverpool. Merseyside police responded to reports of gunfire in Toxteth just after 5 yesterday afternoon. The girl was taken to hospital and is in a stable condition. A 21-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. In Australia, tens of thousands of people have fled their homes following warnings of extreme weather. 14 people have died since the worst floods on record hit both Queensland and New South Wales. Brisbane received 80% of its average annual rainfall in just a few days. Sydney is now bracing for torrential rain and flash floods. We're going to keep you up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you any developments as they happen. Now, let's head to Liam for On the Money.
And coming up on The Money today, the Russia-Ukraine conflict rages, but the Western world's economic war with Russia is also cranking up. Oil and gas giants BP, Shell and Exxon say they're now rushing out of Russia. Media and tech giants are following, suspending business with this country of almost 150 million people. Freight shipping companies also are now refusing to dock in Russian ports. Plus, as the cost of living crisis continues, I'll be speaking to Greg Marsh, the founder of Nous, a service that offers a live view of how price rises will affect family finances. Greg will also be advising on how we should remain vigilant as phone networks hike their prices over the coming months. And today's Money Talks guest, you're going to like this one. It's none other than the former Dragon Den star, business mogul Duncan Bannatyne. The Scottish entrepreneur will be reflecting on his stellar business career that's seen him found many multi-million-pound businesses, write 7 books and appear on a fair few episodes of Dragon's Den. As ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What's your response to the issues raised in today's On the Money? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show. So stay with us. This is GB News on TV and DAB+ digital radio. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're on the money. This is not only a military war between Russia and Ukraine, it's an economic war between Russia and the West. On the Money's been focusing on this East-West economic standoff and what sanctions on companies in Russia, a major exporter of oil, gas and food, of course, might mean for the cost of living here in the UK. Now, though, on top of sanctions by Western governments, in a bid to put pressure on Putin, Western companies are now rushing out of Russia. Already, the UK's BP and Anglo-Dutch company Shell, two oil and gas giants, have vowed to sell their multi-billion-pound stakes in various Russian energy projects. With almost 150 million consumers, post-Soviet Russia's also attracted huge investments from Ford, Boeing, Daimler, as well as media thoroughbreds, Warner Brothers, Disney, Sony, and tech giants Apple and Dell. Again, they're rushing for the door. And now, some of the world's biggest sea freight companies, Maersk of Denmark, Singapore's Ocean Network Express, MSC of Switzerland, Germany's Hapag-Lloyd, they're now refusing to move seaborne freight into and out of Russia. These shipping giants move literally millions of containers every year. By refusing to touch freight into Russia, a major importer of consumer goods, and out of Russia, the world's biggest exporter of wheat, this ban by Maersk, MSC and the rest will affect thousands of companies employing millions of people in Russia and across the world. Every day, now pretty much every hour, more and more Western companies are rushing out of Russia. Centrica, which owns British Gas, it's ending its Russian supply agreements. US oil giant ExxonMobil is following Shell and BP. Since the Soviet Union collapsed 30 years ago, Russia has developed deep business links with the West, links that are now being severed. Putin's Russia's become an economic pariah, isolated from the world. What does that economic isolation mean for you? Well, we focus here on the money, not just on household cost of living, but the cost of living, if you like, for businesses as energy prices rise. I'm delighted to be joined by the managing director of the cold roll forming manufacturer, the Hadley Group. That's Ben Thorpe, heavily involved in the steel industry here in the UK, and our regular panellist, man for all seasons, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, co-founder of Regionally. There he is. Justin, let's turn to you first. You're steeped in the financial markets. It's been quite a rocky ride, hasn't it? Oil going to $110, $111 a barrel this morning. The Russian stock market collapsing. The ruble, the Russian currency, losing 30 or 40% of its value. What's all that doing to Russians?
Well, but also, Liam, you've lived through all of this before, haven't you? I've seen you writing about this when we had the issues over Crimea, when you had the issue over Georgia, and I suppose we've learnt as we go on how we have to react faster and sharper. We're still not fast enough, but it's interesting to see now the doors are being slammed shut. But even things like SWIFT, it took a long time for people to realise.
This international banking payment system that we're excluding Russia from now.
But even that's slightly wrong, because it's not the clues in the name. It's a telecommunication system. It's not a payment system, because you could still actually transfer money without SWIFT. They need to go a little bit beyond that. But they're beginning to learn, because the one key issue that Russia's got a problem with, cash. It needs cash, and particularly if you happen to be running a war at the same time. Maybe you had all that 600 billion of cash stashed away, yes, but not in Russia.
Their foreign exchange reserves.
So
they've been sanctioned, haven't they?
Absolutely.
Western powers have sanctioned the Central Bank of Russia, so it can't access its dollars, its pounds, its euros in order to shore up the currency and shore up the economy.
Banks always have to have a reciprocal partner in the other countries, so they can send the message one to the other, and it's the reciprocal partner bank that does the transfer, or the central bank. Freeze those dollar accounts, not that many of them, and the thing grinds to a halt immediately. Then immediately you'll find that Putin will find that he cannot afford to do this for long. Remember, it's not a strong economy. It's not a very big economy. It's just about half the size of the UK GDP, half the size of the UK economy. So if we get upset every time we fire a missile because we can't afford it, good God, what's this is costing them? A fortune, and they haven't got it.
You're right. I have lived in Russia for a long time over the years. I cut my journalistic teeth as a foreign correspondent in Moscow back in the early 90s. And I remember those post-Soviet days when you had currency collapses and the Soviet Union broke up and Russia was there and the economy was on its knees. The central planning system was being dismantled. And people got used to the currency collapsing and losing all their savings. Ordinary Russian people thought they were through all that. They thought that was their history. And this collapse of the ruble will put pressure on Vladimir Putin. I think that's for sure. But how about, Justin, the likes of Maersk, the likes of MSC, the likes of the Ocean Network Express. These are the biggest shipping companies in the world. They're not going to dock in Russia. And that's astonishing.
It is
like an economic blockade.
Well, it's also a very expensive one, because you actually sit there and think, I'm going to cut out Russia now anymore. You think, well, hang on, how much is that worth to you? Take Shell, for example, and BP. BP's issue with their investment in Gazprom was effectively going to take around about 20% of their profits away. Walking away from that, albeit they're being ordered to, but companies are going to be willing to do so, because otherwise their governments will get on their backs for it. So actually you are seeing very more effective structural issues. Governments are pretty limp when it comes to it, but if you can get the companies to do it, now you'll actually find the sharpness, and then you stop the cash, control those frozen accounts where the currencies go through, and he will be in serious trouble. Because remember, look at the pictures of him standing at the wrong end of the room with all his ministers over that end. This is not a person with a strong team around him.
I have to say, I am surprised at how Western governments have moved together to impose really harsh sanctions on Russia, but also Western companies. This is costing them serious amounts of money. They obviously think that reputation management is more important to them at the moment than the bottom line. But of course, energy prices are rising. Let's go to Ben Tao, who's from the Hadley Group. Ben, thanks a lot for joining us here on The Money. Now, we often focus on the implications of these rising oil prices, rising wholesale gas prices for households, of course. We know household fuel bills are already set to go up sharply in April. We also try and remember how that impacts businesses here in the UK, businesses that employ people, the kind of businesses like you that use lots and lots of energy.
Well, that's absolutely right, Liam. What we're finding is that the UK government has provided a number of different options to business. And if you look at the websites, for instance, Ofgem, they've been incredibly good at suggesting that there will be announcements. But there are not that many announcements. We've had pandemic support, and then there's something else which appears to be coming soon. In terms of business schemes, there's both the Clean Heat Grant, which is upfront capital funding for households and current domestic and non-domestic renewable heat incentives. There's Green Gas Support Scheme. That is all good. It's ultimately about putting more green gas into the national grid. But we're really struggling in business to find where the UK government is going to source this additional capacity from, because ultimately, coming back to the point about Russia and Ukraine, really the UK absorbs around 5% of its supply of natural gas imported from Russia, whereas the EU have a far larger problem, and that being around 40%. But then when you come back to the fact that the EU primarily owns a lot of infrastructure within the UK, and it's common business practice to aggregate together the different costs and prices, then you have to come to the conclusion that this conflict is potentially going to increase prices significantly. And we've seen that in a number of ways. For instance, recently, the gas futures rose 50% overnight, which declined by the end of the week to about 24%.
Huge.
It's just enormous. But actually, to put that into a little bit of context, that's 370% up over the year.
Unreal. Ben, I'm struck that you're joining us from Smethwick in the West Midlands. The Hadley Group employs hundreds of people. Now, of course, I have every confidence your business is well managed. It's on a very solid footing. But I think it is true to say, isn't it, that a lot of these companies, steel makers, cold roll forming manufacturers like yourself, metal fabricators, manufacturers in general, you use a lot of energy. You are heavy energy users. And there must be some of these companies in these red wall seats across Britain, which the Tories took in 2019, they need to retain. There must be some companies who, with the best will in the world, as energy prices spiral upwards, are fearing for their very existence.
That's absolutely true. We're finding the increased pressures are coming through from a variety of different sources. So gas is one, clearly energy, electricity being another. The difficulty being, in terms of how householders might look at this, I was with Bulb. We were very comfortable having our sustainable energy supply, and yet suddenly they've gone bust. And so many others, and business itself is really starting to feel the pressure of not being able to business plan moving forward. So really the message to government has to be around what is the plan, and they need to publish those plans, because really, they set the envelope within which business operates. If we can't plan, potentially we're going to be less effective and less able to maneuver the resources that we do have into the right place to make the best of this international opportunity, which comes at a huge risk.
Ben Tao of the Hadley Group in Smethwick in the West Midlands. Stay with us. We're going to carry on with this discussion. Justin Urquhart-Stewart's going to stay with us. This very important debate that we're having about the implications of this East-West economic war on the cost of living and on businesses here in the UK. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. We're going to keep this discussion going. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A damp and gloomy day for most of us as a band of rain moves north, bringing extensive low cloud and hill fog, but it stays mostly dry and bright for the far north of Scotland as the influence of high pressure gradually moves to the east. Here's the weather front, meanwhile, moving up from the south. Nothing particularly heavy associated with this. It's mostly light and moderate outbreaks of rain pushing into central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England by the afternoon, and remaining generally gloomy and damp across the rest of England, much of Wales as well. Something a little drier and brighter for the east and southeast of England, and it's mild in the southwest, 11 to 13 Celsius, but it's also mild in the north of Scotland, where we keep the sunshine through the afternoon, and 10 or 11 Celsius possible here. But the rain pushes into the north of the mainland by the evening. It's a windy evening for many, especially western Scotland, with the risk of gales in exposed spots. The rain arrives into Orkney, but Shetland stays clear overnight. And for much of the UK, with the extensive low cloud and those outbreaks of rain continuing, it is a mild night, a frost-free start to Thursday, but a damp and gloomy start once again. This time, some heavier and more persistent rainfall pushes into western Scotland, western England and Wales, moving slowly into central parts by the afternoon. Meanwhile, it's a much brighter day for East Anglia in the southeast. Sunshine here, 11 to 13 degrees, and it does brighten up across Northern Ireland, West Wales, southwest England by the afternoon as well. Most places seeing highs of 9 to 12 degrees. The band of rain slowly moves east during Thursday night, and it's really going to stall across eastern parts of the UK on Friday whilst brighter weather arrives into the west. Gradually, the weekend does turn drier and a little brighter. There'll be some sunshine around with highs of 8 or 9 Celsius.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:22. We're discussing not just Russia and Ukraine's military conflict. We're discussing the economic conflict between Russia and the West. In recent days, of course, BP, Shell and other oil and gas giants have said they're severing their links with Vladimir Putin's Russia, and now many other leading Western companies with deep investments in Russia, Ford, Boeing, Apple, they're also heading for the door. But what does this economic isolation of Russia mean for you at home? I'm still with my expert panel, and I'm delighted to be joined by Elizabeth Shimfossel. Now, Elizabeth is author of the highly acclaimed book, Rich Russians, From Oligarchs to Bourgeoisie. She's very well known among Russia-focused commentators. I'm pleased to say I've known her for a long time and talked to her about Russia over many years. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us here on The Money. You spent many years in Russia. You speak Russian very well. You're now working at Aston University as an academic. You were previously at University College London. It's the first time I've been in touch with you here since this conflict began. How surprised are you we are where we are?
Very surprised, very shocked, of course, and scared of the future, what it might bring.
Now, when you wrote your book, you spent a lot of time with a lot of these Russian oligarchs we hear so much about. You got access to them in a way that I think no other writer ever has. How do you think they're going to be feeling about what's happening, about this economic isolation? The people you spoke to, they're all people, or mostly people who were born in Soviet days. They grew up as the transition economy happened in the 90s. They've worked really hard to build these business bridges between Russia and the West, some of them in a very, very legitimate way, a very respectable way, others not so legitimate, not so respectable. Do you think these Western sanctions will hit them hard personally and also in their mind?
They are certainly hitting them hard in their minds. In terms of personally, it will clearly have implications for all of them in one way or the other. The hardest hit at the moment are those who actually landed on a sanction list. But there are not many of them. It's so far only the EU who's put what we understood as oligarchs up until maybe a couple of weeks ago are on sanction lists. The other ones that's been declared oligarchs, we wouldn't have thought of oligarchs just a couple of weeks ago. So it's a bit as if the world leaders have redefined the term oligarchs and put on the list those names who are Putin cronies, who got rich through the St. Petersburg Times in the 90s, in the friendship with Putin. But it's the first one in particular. Johnson announced on his list, when it's now 8 days ago, on Tuesday last week, they were basically non-sanctioned because the Rothenberg son and brother, Igor and Boris, have nothing
close to Putin,
but they have nothing to do in Britain. They might have lost some flats and houses they had for their own use, but otherwise they've never expected to be welcomed with open arms in London, and certainly never. They certainly also took precautions to shift their money offshore anyway, as Patrushev, we know from Paradise Papers.
That's right.
Had.
Now, you're originally from Austria. You spent a lot of your life in Russia. As I've said, you've also built a life here. You're a very, very respected academic at some of our finest universities. Austria has close business links with Russia, doesn't it? Britain has close business links with Russia. You know, companies, global giants, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Renault, Volkswagen. It's very, very different from the Soviet era, isn't it? Blue chip Western companies from both our respective countries have invested deeply. So today we're covering how those businesses are rushing out of Russia. That's really going to hurt them, isn't it?
Yes, in Austria, it's, for example, Raiffeisenbank, who's always been very deep in Russia, and they have now to take measures. But then again, someone like our former chancellor in Austria, Schüssel, he is on the board of Gazprom.
As is Gerhard Schröder, the former Chancellor of Germany.
But Schüssel already announced that he will certainly not gave up his seat on the board because Gazprom, after all, is not, as he says, a Russian company. It's registered elsewhere.
Wow. So using the little loophole. Very, very interesting. Justin, let's come back to you. It's great to be surrounded today by people who really have a deep knowledge of business. You're very much a man of the City of London. We know that 30-odd Russian companies are listed on the main board of the London Stock Exchange. There's been a huge effort, hasn't there, over the years to integrate Russian finance, the Russian economy, legitimate Russian businesses. There are many legitimate Russian businesses. We should say that, into the UK's sort of financial world and vice versa. A lot of this is now unravelling.
Well, it is unravelling, but also quite a fair number of those companies, particularly the Central Asian ones, when they were listing here, the quality standards they had to get through to get on the market.
Yeah,
the reason
companies from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, countries like that.
There's no way they could have floated in New York. Yeah. Their directors would have been in chokey straight away. Yeah. So we had pretty lax allowances. Okay. Now we're going to have to put up and say, right, OK, do we really want these companies listed on here or not? And if you're not, then chuck them out. So actually, it's a good lesson for London, the London Stock Exchange. We had a bad reputation for laundering. We have a bad reputation for taking companies onto markets which didn't live up to the right standards. Now we've got these ESG, environmental, sustainable, governance. That levels, and people get a bit fashionable with it, but it's a very good hammer to hit them with.
You know, maybe I'm cynical. I like to call myself sceptical. I'm sure there are lots of companies saying today we're going to leave Russia. They're just going to wait for the kind of, obviously, this is a very, very serious conflict. It's not going to be forgotten any time soon, if ever. But, they're not going to rip up the Nord Stream gas pipeline, are they? The world's biggest undersea pipeline. We've already got Nord Stream 1. It's been going since 2012. Nord Stream 2 next to it between Germany and Russia. That's going to continue, and it might open a bit later. Are Shell and BP really going to sell their stakes? Well, we'll see. They say they are, in fairness to them, but they're very, very complex transactions. But I feel some things will change forever now in terms of commercial links between particularly the UK and Russia.
Yeah, I mean, what had been going on was been almost done with chums. We know these people well, as opposed to clear regulatory standards. And is London going to live up to those or not? Good test for them, see if they're actually going to be. And to be able to step back and say, that's not acceptable. But it's just a pain. It's going to cause real pain for those companies. Look how much BP will have to lose if Gazprom was just written off their holding there. It's like about a quarter of their profits.
Rosneft. That's a big chunk of their reserves, isn't it? The oil that they can say is on their balance sheet that they can pump in future years. That hits their entire valuation. Now, a company that's in many people's pension portfolios here in the UK.
Add then Shell with the Sakhalin and things like that, and that's the key point. It comes back to our pension funds, those big drivers of dividends being paid, compounding. That's the primary driver of those pension funds. And suddenly, who is this going to be affecting? The answer is it will affect us all individually in a really rather painful way. Are we willing to accept it? Well, let's look at the news. The answer is yes.
Justin Urquhart-Stewart, co-founder of Regionally, and Elizabeth Schimpfossel, the author of Rich Russians from the Bourgeoisies to Oligarchs.
The other way around? What a way to vice versa again.
Great to have you on the show. Thanks for making it.
Thank you.
And of course, Ben Tao from the Hadley Group. Fabulous discussion here on The Money, as ever. Grown-up debates with people who really know their stuff. And talking of grown-up debates, let's bring in some of your views. Tony says inflation will soar over 10% easily. An energy crisis will bankrupt UK and EU businesses. This is a perfect storm. Putin was well aware of this situation. Elizabeth says, you speak of Russian isolation, but we might come to see it as Western isolation as Russia looks east. A very important point there, those links between Russia and China, which we will explore in later editions of On the Money. Keep your emails coming. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @GBNews. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:31. After the break, we'll be looking at the smart news service which claims it helps people to keep control of their household spending as the cost of living spirals. And for today's Money Talks interview and in-depth discussion, I'll be joined by the Scottish entrepreneur and author Duncan Bannatyne. Yes, that Duncan Bannatyne. From ice cream vans to care homes to spas, his business career has ventured far and wide. He'll be telling us just how he did it after the break. But first, it's the GB News headlines with Rosie Wright.
Good afternoon, it's 1:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister has told the Commons Russia's actions in Ukraine fully qualify as a war crime. Ahead of Prime Minister's questions, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, who was watching proceedings, was welcomed with a standing ovation. Boris Johnson praised Ukraine and its citizens for their resolve. He also said he told the President, Volodymyr Zelensky, that the UK will do everything it can to accelerate the delivery of weapons.
Mr. Speaker, with the continued heroism and resolve of the Ukrainian people, which is so amazing that we've seen over the last few days, and with the unity of the West that we are seeing, which I think has also taken aback President Putin, I've no doubt at all, Mr. Speaker, that he will fail and that we will succeed in protecting Ukraine.
He'll perish.
In Ukraine, the State Emergency Service says more than 2,000 civilians have been killed since the start of the Russian invasion. Hundreds of structures, including transport facilities, hospitals, kindergartens and homes, have also been destroyed. The UN's Refugee Agency says more than 874,000 people have now fled Ukraine to neighbouring countries since the conflict began. Most of them are in Poland, which has taken almost 500,000 refugees. Companies have also been taking action against Russia. The US aeroplane manufacturer Boeing has suspended parts and maintenance for the country's airlines. Google has blocked mobile apps connected to news channels RT and Sputnik. Apple has halted the sale of products and restricted its map services. Ford has also interrupted its operations. I'll keep you up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Don't go anywhere. On the Money, we'll be back shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. Now, the UK is, of course, experiencing a cost of living crisis. The Consumer Price Index put inflation at 5.5% in January, a 30-year high. And for many people, the actual rate of inflation they're experiencing is much higher. This squeeze on living standards will be felt even more keenly in April, I'm afraid, when national insurance rises are due to kick in, plus that higher Ofgem energy price cap that will push up household utility bills. Stretching a family budget can be stressful. Now, Greg Marsh says that's why he founded Nous last year. That's a new service that helps households get an up-to-date idea of how price rises and interest rate and tax changes will affect their finances. And here to tell us more, it's CEO and co-founder of Nous, Greg Marsh. Today's Startup Britain. Greg, thank you for coming into On the Money studio and being our latest Startup Britain guest. So tell us what Nous is all about.
Nous is, in the first sense, a service that gives you the facts about your household. And this is a problem because the numbers you read in the newspapers, the numbers you see on television are all over the place. You'll hear estimates of inflation's going to rise by 5% or 10%. Even the idea of thinking about percentages just confuses a lot of people. So we set ourselves the challenge of trying to make it really simple and really straightforward to understand what the cost of living crisis is going to mean for you and for your household. And we do that by pulling together information about what you're actually spending your money on, about how much you're actually earning, and getting the facts in front of us, and then providing live in real time for you a personalized indication of what this is going to look like for you over the next 12 months, so that you as a householder can start to make plans and start to adapt, if necessary, economize, but also maybe find opportunities to make savings where you wouldn't otherwise have looked for them.
And how does the information get into your app? Is it an app on a smartphone? When people go shopping, do they then have to punch in all their groceries? Or how do you keep a track of people's spending so then you can give them the kind of, not so much financial advice, but information to update them so they know where they are?
Well, that's a great question. And here technology can be used for people rather than just to figure out how to get us to spend a bit more or click another advert on the margin. There's a whole raft of services that have emerged over the last few years which have principally been used by businesses to help give them more instant information about how they're spending money. And one of the things we're doing is taking those services and making them available to households and consumers. There's a principle called open banking, which is a way that banks can securely share information about your spending with your consent and without ever actually touching the money, so that, again, we can provide that real-time analysis. And that means that you get the benefit of knowing what this is going to do to you without having to type in lots of numbers or scan receipts or take copies of emails and those kinds of things, which is something that none of us have time to do.
So what I'd really like to know is how you guys make money, because there will be people listening who will think, oh, they want my information, they want to sell it to other people. Is this really the right thing to do? Now, we know there's a big cost of living crisis. We talk about it here on The Money every single day. We know a lot of people are struggling to make ends meet, and that's before this April increase in the cost of living. We know there's going to be an increase in national insurance contributions. We know there's going to be an increase in inflation in general. We know that national insurance contributions are going to go up. People are watching On the Money every day, and every day I'm talking about oil prices rising and petrol and diesel costs going up and all the rest of it. So it strikes me that there is a big cost of living crisis coming. And so I wonder what it is about Nous that can really help, because there will be some people who are quite sceptical, with all due respect to you, Greg.
People should be sceptical because, to be quite blunt about it, the whole price comparison industry, right, those websites you go to get quotes for car insurance, you don't pay for those. But somebody does.
Yeah.
And I think what we're gradually figuring out is that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yeah.
Now, we are intending to make our dashboard, our information service available for free. And there's a reason for that. The more people who sign up to it, the smarter we get and the better the advice we can offer. And then, in time, when we're ready, when we've got that information, we've got that insight, we will be charging people in a very straightforward way, a few pounds a month, for a service that provides an automation and support layer on top of that. So in a way, we're trying to do something quite unfashionable as a business. We're not going to make money through advertising. We're not going to make money by selling people's information. We hope to make money by actually providing them a valuable service that saves them money.
By getting people to use the service, to value the service, and then you can charge them a little bit. I want to come onto the mobile phones, because I know you're really vigilant about that stuff. But just before I do, Greg, relatively low-income households that are struggling, particularly as the cost of living spirals, they're the ones more likely, are they not, to be using Nous. And there are some companies, some unscrupulous companies, that like to target vulnerable households like that. Credit companies that charge high rates of interest and other such firms that can be quite predatory. How can we be sure that people spending information, all their financial characteristics, won't end up in the hands of those companies that then, frankly, put the hard sell on these households?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid concern. We don't sell advertising. We're not selling credit products. We started the business with a very different view in mind, almost on a mission, if you will, to try to put into the hands of consumers the same technologies that big businesses were routinely using to take advantage of those consumers. So we see our role as to fight for households against some of the more cynical and opportunistic practices of big business, and sometimes, let's be honest, of the government, Liam. So, look, I think the punchline is you're exactly right. The cost of living crisis will disproportionately affect some of the poorer households in the country and some of the busier households.
I don't think we've got that yet. So let's talk about mobile phones. We know a lot of this is an inflationary environment. Firms can be again opportunistic and predatory. They can put prices up a lot, even if their costs aren't going up much, because we expect all prices to rise. Are mobile phone companies likely to do that? What can we do to push back?
Well, and you mentioned mobile phone companies. I was really struck. I got a text message from Vodafone a few days ago. I would love to say a happy customer. I've been a contented customer for many years. I got a text message and it said the prices are rising because inflation is up, and inflation is 5.4% was their index. But the text message was very cleverly worded. Because until you read it 3 times, I'm a geek and I love this stuff, and it took me 3 times reading that message to read really what they were telling me. I've got a picture of this to make sure people understand what's happening to Vodafone's charges on the 1st of April. It's not just that they're increasing their prices by 5.4%, but they're also increasing them by an additional 3.9%. So that means that that's a total increase of nearly 10%, almost twice the rate of inflation. Now, that is the perfect example of a company, by the way, that made 4.4 billion pounds of pre-tax profit last year. A company whose CEO was paid 36 million pounds last year in share options and bonuses. And this is a business which is using the cost of living crisis as an excuse to jack prices up and affecting ordinary householders. Now, who's calling that out? Well, I think our job as a company, but also your job as a journalist, is to call out these kinds of pretty cynical and opportunistic practices. And we see our role in business as to try to make life a bit simpler and a bit fairer for households who otherwise, this stuff, you don't notice it unless you're really paying attention. Who of us has the time between collecting the kids from school and sorting out the this and the that and organising the family holiday and making sure that, the plates are cleared away at the end of the day? And so we've got to be vigilant.
Well, Greg Marsh of Nous, you are our latest Startup Britain guest. I'll be watching the company report back in the months to come. Be interesting to see what happens.
And in the meantime, Nous.co, sign up to our wait list and help us make this fairer.
Greg Marsh there of Nous. Now, a Vodafone spokesman told GB News, "We know no one wants to see price increases, but these reflect the rising costs that we continue to face in running our network and providing our services. Like many other industries, we face rising operational costs, including energy, staffing, logistics and transport." And an EE spokesperson said, "Instead of unexpected and inconsistent price changes throughout the year, we introduced a single contracted price rise. Thank you, EE. Thank you. That would happen annually from the 31st of March. As usage across our networks continues to increase, and with our customers relying on us for connectivity more than ever before, it's crucial we continue to invest in our network services and the latest technologies." O2 did not respond to our request for a comment, but they're always welcome on the show. Time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks, and my guest today is none other than the world-renowned business leader and entrepreneur Duncan Bannatyne, a former star from the TV series Dragon's Den. Duncan's business career spans far and wide. He was raised in modest circumstances in Clydebank, Scotland, and his entrepreneurial spirit was evident from a young age. His first business began with the purchase of a £450 ice cream van. He then bought a fleet and later sold the business, using the money to build a care home company, which was then sold for £26 million. Since then, Duncan Bannatyne's founded companies including children's nursery chain, a health club chain and a spa hotel. And here he is, Duncan Bannatyne. It's today's Money Talks. Duncan Bannatyne, great to have you here on The Money. Dragon's Den star and all of that. I've looked at your business career over many years with admiration. Tell us how you did it. What was different between you and the other kids in the playground at school that made you want to go out and buy an ice cream van when other people were telling you it was a bad idea?
Good morning, Liam. I don't know. I remember having a conversation with my brothers. We were teenagers, young teenagers, and seeing a nice car. I told them I was going to have one of those cars one day, and they said I was being silly. So I think there is a bit of arrogance involved. I think you have to have arrogant self-belief that you can do it. And I failed at school miserably. I didn't know why. I know now why. I know it's because I was dyslexic and didn't know it. And but I knew that I wasn't stupid, as I was called. And so I knew I was going to do something. And I ended up starting business much later in life and realised that I enjoyed business. And it was a way of making money that I never had dreamed of before, or had only dreamed of before. And so I went into business and the business took off and that was it. And I am where I am. And not enjoying business anymore as much, but enjoying life, certainly.
Now, Dragon's Den is in your past. I think it's fair to say you were a very successful dragon. You were on the show for a long time. What did you learn from that series? Did you really learn anything about business, or was it maybe, with all due respect, show business?
I think I did learn a bit about business, yeah. I mean, I don't think you could sit in front of such accomplished entrepreneurs beside me and not learn something. So I certainly learned a lot. I learned quite a lot about retail, for example, from Theo Papitis, who's a retail magnate, and he's great, very successful guy. So I learned a bit, but what I learned was that I was spending about 26 days a year in a studio after 10 years, and I thought I don't want to waste any more of my time doing this, and so that's when I left.
That's a lesson for me. Duncan.
Well, you might do it for a living. It's very different doing it for a living as you just do it. Most of it is fun, but after 10 years doing the same thing, the fun goes out of it.
I've been reporting today on how it's not just a military conflict between Russia and Ukraine, it's an economic war, if you like, between Russia and the West. We've got many blue chip companies, thoroughbred companies rushing out of Russia, not just the oil and gas giants, the consumer good giants. We've got all kinds of tech companies and media companies and so on. What do you make of this conflict?
I think the conflict is getting out of hand. I think it's getting almost close to another world war. And I think, we have to do something very quick to prevent it escalating even further. I'm not sure what we can do, but certainly I think Putin must realise he made a mistake, and how he gets out of that mistake, I don't know, but we have to give him some opportunity to be able to walk out without his head too low before there's many more deaths. And I think what we've all seen is the courage and the bravery of the people of Ukraine that have held him back, and I've never seen anything like it. This is going to be an amazing story to tell for years and years to come if we all survive it.
Now, the UK has produced all kinds of very successful entrepreneurs, not just England, of course, but the Scots, yourself, people from Ireland, people from Wales. We are known as pretty canny entrepreneurs, pretty vibrant commercial people. Do you think we're becoming more or less entrepreneurial as a nation? Because unless we're becoming more entrepreneurial, in the end, the nation's wealth, society's wealth, business creates the wealth upon which everything else depends, is likely to diminish.
Yeah, I think we're certainly over the last 10 or 15 years become more entrepreneurial all around the country, particularly with because people have seen programs like Dragon's Den and The Apprentice, and they wanted to go into business, and they're becoming successful at it. And I think that hopefully that continues. But you know, there's been a big impact on how we live and how we want to live from the pandemic, and now almost world war, and how we come out of that and what we think of that after it ends is going to just see how entrepreneurial we are and how entrepreneurial we can be.
Where does Britain get its creative spark from, Duncan? It can't be a coincidence that this tiny windswept rock in the North Sea has generated so many ideas over centuries, has generated so much commerce, has been a sort of superpower of entrepreneurialism, to coin a phrase. Where do you think that comes from? What part of our national psyche makes us like that?
I think it's come from us. Certainly, when I was a kid, and I saw some other big name entrepreneurs, and I thought, well, they're saying that they started with nothing and have made all this money, so surely I can do that. And you saw some great entrepreneurs. I mean, the greatest of all, probably over the time, has been Richard Branson, and the business he started and what he's done is absolutely phenomenal. Aaron Sugar as well has done phenomenal businesses, and people saw this and realised that they could do it. And you know, my autobiography was called "Anyone Can Do It," and I really believe anyone can do it. Anyone can start a business, and they can do it very, very well. It requires a lot of hard work. It requires dedication. It requires, as I say, a bit of arrogance that you believe you can do it when nobody else is telling you can't. And people are starting to realise that this is true. They can do it. They can start a business and they become entrepreneurial.
You're joining us from Miami, Duncan. You're looking, if I may say so, very well. I'm not envious. You're in a sunny place. Not at all. Not me. So what's the future for Duncan Bannatyne in terms of your business career? Having been on Dragon's Den, you know, you're going to be closely watched for the rest of your commercial life, if you like. Yeah. So what are you up to?
Well, business-wise, I'm only up to looking after the one business I have, my main business, which is the Bannatyne Group, which is a group of companies that own health clubs, hotels, and some properties. And you know, surviving that is the main thing at the moment, because it's not difficult. It is difficult at the moment. It's a difficult time, and I just have to ensure that we keep our costs down, keep as many of our clubs open as we can. I've closed 4 clubs since the beginning of the pandemic that won't open again, but the rest of them should survive, and we keep people in employment.
And how serious do you think the economic environment is that we're entering now, Duncan? Even before the huge instability of this Russia-Ukraine conflict, we knew here in the UK, in America where you are, inflation's at a 30-year high in both those countries. The cost of living squeeze is upon us. Does this remind you of the 70s when we were kids, or do you think it's something different?
Well, I think it's something very different. I think it's very dangerous. We don't know what's going to happen if Putin presses the red button and it starts a nuclear war. I mean, the world will just change so dramatically. If it hasn't already changed, and it's changed for many people. I think we have to understand that we have a duty as well to look after Ukrainian refugees. They shouldn't be left in refugee camps. They should be given an opportunity to have some sort of decent life. The best we can all give. All UK and all European countries must do that. And stop thinking about the bottom line profit. It's not the most important thing anymore. It's not going to be for a long time. The thing is survival and looking after each other. Being kind to each other would be nice.
Well said, that man. I could not agree more. Well, Duncan Bannatyne, it really is a privilege to interview you. It'd be great to have you in the Money Talk studio in person as and when you're back in the UK. All the best and thanks for joining us. Duncan Bannatyne there. And that is all we got time for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back tomorrow for more On the Money, closely watching the economic implications of the Russian-Ukraine crisis. This is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A damp and gloomy day for most of us as a band of rain moves north, bringing extensive low cloud and hill fog. But it stays mostly dry and bright for the far north of Scotland as the influence of high pressure gradually moves to the east. Here's the weather front, meanwhile, moving up from the south. Nothing particularly heavy associated with this. It's mostly light and moderate outbreaks of rain pushing into central and southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England by the afternoon, and remaining generally gloomy and damp across the rest of England, much of Wales as well. Something a little drier and brighter for the east and southeast of England. And it's mild in the southwest, 11 to 13 Celsius, but it's also mild in the north of Scotland, where we keep the sunshine through the afternoon, and 10 or 11 Celsius possible here. But the rain pushes into the north of the mainland by the evening. It's a windy evening for many, especially western Scotland, with the risk of gales in exposed spots. The rain arrives into Orkney, but Shetland stays clear overnight. And for much of the UK, with the extensive low cloud and those outbreaks of rain continuing, it is a mild night, a frost-free start to Thursday, but a damp and gloomy start once again. This time, some heavier and more persistent rainfall pushes into western Scotland, western England and Wales, moving slowly into central parts by the afternoon. Meanwhile, it's a much brighter day for East Anglia in the southeast. Sunshine here, 11 to 13 degrees, and it does brighten up across Northern Ireland, West Wales, southwest England by the afternoon as well. Most places seeing highs of 9 to 12 degrees. The band of rain slowly moves east during Thursday night, and it's really going to stall across eastern parts of the UK on Friday whilst brighter weather arrives into the west. Gradually, the weekend does turn drier and a little brighter. There'll be some sunshine around with highs of 8 or 9 Celsius.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your